What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 13 of Only for the Strong. Today's guest is New Zealand's #1 men's singles tennis player, Ajeet. How are you, mate?
Hey, mate. All good. Yeah, long time no see.
Yeah, bit of a throwback today.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm in the fitness and training and nutrition sector, but my first love is tennis. So I'm quite excited to talk to you today and hash into a few things in that world. But where I wanted to start with you is from the outside. I think a lot of people think the life of a professional tennis player is super glamorous. However, it's probably one of the most competitive sports in the world. Can you start by getting into a little bit of the highs and lows of being a professional tennis player?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, like the iceberg effect. Everyone sees, you traveling to these countries and everything, which honestly, it is amazing. And I'm grateful that right now with my ranking, I'm starting to experience the biggest tournaments in the world. So I'm very lucky in that aspect. But it's a grind, man. You don't get rewarded for much up until you're top 500 in the world. And that's the sacrifices I had to make. I mean, you're also a boys high, you've gone boys high old boy. And the sacrifices I had to make on weekends, at school, after school, not hanging out with mates, not having a lot of mates, because you're not interacting with them. And the sacrifices you have to make to get to where you want to go, and then having the risk of maybe not even achieving that and losing your childhood is a massive fear, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from playing tennis. So I think, yeah, there's amazing highs, and I personally just love all aspects of the game. But I know there's a lot of lows, but for me, right now I know where my goals are, and I'm just hungry to achieve them, to be honest. So there's not a whole lot of lows in my career right now, but growing up, there definitely was.
What did those look like growing up? Because I don't know if you've read Andre Agassi's autobiography, but he talks about his upbringing with the game, and he seemed to have a very love-hate relationship with it growing up, and even professionally, and if anything, more of a hate relationship. What did your upbringing look like? Was your childhood completely tennis? And how's your relationship with the game sort of looked over the last, I guess, 10, 15 years?
Yeah. Well, of course, because my dad being a coach, that was kind of my way of spending time with him after school, was going down to the courts, and play games with your mates and stuff. And then just started getting good, and, winning tennis matches is like a drug. It's super addictive, and I just got addicted to that feeling. That's kind of how it started for me, and I've just carried it on. It's a family. It's definitely a family thing with us. With my brother who played as well, my dad being a coach. Mum and sister don't really enjoy it, but they come and watch me and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely just about spending time with my parents and my dad. Sorry, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Of course, I wasn't going to be a rugby player with my build, so you're not going to see an Indian on the wing anytime soon. So, yeah, tennis was pretty much the best sport to play, which was non-contact. So, yeah, I just enjoy it a lot.
So, obviously, I remember as well, because I played a bit of tennis when I was younger, and I remember in our region in Taranaki, you did quite well. So, I'm assuming you won a lot and felt a lot. As you progressed and started playing bigger tournaments, especially as a professional, would it be fair to say that as a tennis player, you lose more often than you win?
Oh, 100%. No tennis player in the world wins more than they lose. Maybe Djokovic. But besides that, the rest of them lose more than you win. And I think the best thing I've learned in the last couple of years, and what I've gotten a lot better at, is learning from your losses and taking those experiences and not making the same mistake twice, and not letting those losses get to your head too much. You take them to heart, but you don't let them get to your head. So, I think you definitely lose a lot more than you win. And, there's one winner every week, and, of course you want it to be you, but you're going to lose more tournaments than you win throughout the year.
Was the losses something you struggled with a little bit early on? Because I know a lot of tennis players, or just a lot of super competitive athletes, really wear their losses very heavy. Is that something you struggled with a bit earlier on?
If I'm honest, I think it was more my ego which
Mm.
struggled with it. You know, growing up in a small town like Taranaki, and you're winning all the time, and then you get exposed to New Zealand, and you're winning all the time, and then you get exposed to the rest of the world, and you're not winning. You don't understand it as a kid,
Mm.
and as a young player, you don't understand it. But I've come to a point in my career now where I give my 120% every time I get out on court, and prepare to go for a war and go to an absolute battle. And if I lose, I'm I'm of course unhappy, but I have no guilt walking off the court because I've left my all out there. And
Mm.
once you're an athlete that can start doing that day in, day out, you'll start making massive gains. But it's also harder said than done. And
Mm.
it's harder to do, sorry. Um, so yeah, I think that's when I was young, I used to hold myself back a lot because of my ego, and you know, you would end up throwing matches subconsciously because you don't want your ego to hurt, you know, and then oh, I didn't give my best effort, so you feel good when you actually look like you honestly look quite weak and like a loser when you see people like that now.
Mm.
Um, so I give my all, and if it's not to be, it's not to be. But you go back to the drawing board and you learn, and that's the beauty I've found out of sport and the growth process I've learned with tennis, not just in tennis but in life, is such a beautiful thing, and that's kind of what gets me going, and that's kind of what's ticking me over all the time.
Mm. So it's kind of a bit of that, you like big fish in a small pond. You started at, and then as you
Yeah,
go to a bigger pond, you're a smaller fish. And it's, I think,
yeah,
accepting that it's the constant growth that you're chasing, not actually just being the biggest fish straight away. Um,
yeah, exactly.
and that kind of parlays into my next question, and that's tennis in New Zealand has particularly been like we've particularly been a nation that's a little bit behind the major countries. Do you feel any like do you feel a chip on your shoulder to change this, and do you feel any pressure to represent New Zealand in the Grand Slams?
Yes and no. I don't use it as I more use it as fuel. Um, and it's not fuel for me, but it's fuel to build a pathway for the younger generation coming up. Because I think things would have looked a lot differently for me when you're younger and you're looking up to guys playing in Grand Slams, because you see those goals as that's where you want to go, where you see the New Zealand team so patriotic about Davis Cup, so that's your goals, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So whatever you see as a 7-year-old kid, like imagine if New Zealand didn't have the All Black rugby team, or they
Mm.
weren't a world class All Black rugby team. No one would dream of being an All Black. You know, not as many people dream of being an All White. They dream of playing for Barcelona or playing for Real Madrid or anything because they want to see the best players in the world. Not saying that the soccer team is not the best in the world, but what I'm saying is kids are drawn towards the best. That's what they have, their idols, their role models, all of that stuff. So you know, as a kid, every my generation, every kid who played rugby wanted to be Dan Carter or Richie.
Mm.
So I think that's where tennis, if we can get more players to the Grand Slams, tennis is going to start growing in the country automatically. I mean, look at Ryan Fox. I think he's already grown golf so much
Mm.
because he's starting to go to the Masters, and that gives the younger generation some belief. So I think it's not just about me feeling pressure for me, but it's pressure to build kind of a pathway for the younger generation at the same time.
Mm. How have you seen the sport sort of grow, or I guess just develop in the last 10 years in New Zealand? Because even growing up in Taranaki, like half the thing was that the weather's pretty bad in the winter and we pretty
Yeah,
much have all outdoor courts. So we go and play footy or another sport during the winter. Are those sort of things changing, or is it still pretty similar? Or
I'm not even around enough to even make a comment on it in New Zealand. Like, I mean, last year I was only home for 2 months of the
mm,
year, so it's very tough for me to make a comment on something like that. But I mean, I just know it's really interesting because when you get older, you know, I used to think back when I was playing, like my brother, like Amrit Rai, Jordan Fleming. Cameron Kosh, Michael Fleming, all these players in Taranaki were like unbelievable. They were gods in my eyes, you know? And then you get older and you become number one in the country and you still see them as good players, but I don't know the level gauge from now until back then. Like I've always said to my dad, like my dad always, you know, blows his own trumpet about how much of a good player he was back in the day. And, you know, I ask him like, hey, like who would have won if I'm playing you on my prime and you're playing in your prime? And he's like, oh, like it would probably be 7-6, 7-6. I was like, okay, jog on. Like there's just no chance. But it's just interesting because I just want to know like the level when those guys were at the top to now the top Taranaki players who I don't actually even know who it is right now. I just want to know the difference or, you know, the level. It's just it's a tough one. Whereas in rugby, I feel like that's a bit easier to gauge. Whereas in tennis, it's like, if you can bring my brother back to his prime, I'd love to play him. Or bring Michael Fleming back or bring Jordan Fleming back, you know? Any of those guys, bring them back, the Taranaki players in their prime, and it would be pretty cool to have a tournament like with those guys.
Yeah. Can you touch on the relationship, like the coaching relationship with your dad? Because it's an interesting dynamic, and I'm not sure if you've even ever thought about it but from his position, he's having to be a coach and a dad at the same time, and that's probably very challenging in a lot of ways.
Oh, trust me, I've thought about it in every way. I've thought about it in every single way possible. Yeah, I mean, my dad, Rakesh is his name, Rakesh Rai, and probably one of the best coaches I've ever been around. Not just saying that because it's my dad, but he is a tennis like scientist. He just understands technique and body mechanics so well. And yeah, people ask me like, why do you and your brother serve so well? You know, why do you guys have such? If anyone knew my brother, they would understand how well my brother served. And my dad's just understanding of the game is at a very, very high level. Growing up, it was tough him coaching me because, you know, he would coach you and then he would talk to you about something personal off the court. We'll be sharing rooms most of the time overseas. And yeah, it was difficult. And now my dad's kind of in a position where he's stepped back as coaching me and he's more managing the whole process. And, you know, I can pick up the phone and talk to him, hey, Dad, how's your day? Which I'm honestly loving that part of it. So it's easy. It's hard. There's a lot of joy. There's a lot of pain. It's a mixture of emotions. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. Do you appreciate it a lot more now than when you did when you were younger?
No. No, I'm still processing that. I definitely do appreciate it now in a sense, not regarding hands-on tennis coaching, but more the sense of the journey we've been on together and how close he's been to that journey. You know, like at ASB Classic this year, beat a top 100 player, and, you know, you can see it in his eyes, just how proud he is of, you know, seeing me beat a guy 70 in the world. And, you know, I think that's where a lot of people when I was younger gave my dad a lot of grief because they're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you're wasting your time, or Ajeet's disrespectful, or, you know, like I copped a lot of criticism for the way I used to act, and fair enough. And he stood by me as my dad, and now it's the opposite. You know, people are congratulating him and stuff, but they didn't see the pain and the heartache he went through, not just me as a player, but as a parent and as a dad, for some of the things you have to see and deal with and hear, and channel those things into keeping his eyes on the prize and painting my journey for me.
So, like I touched on earlier, tennis is obviously a super competitive sport. And I think being like a single or solo sport, it's even a little bit more ruthless. But where's your mentality around your goal? Like, is it to be number one, even if it's super lofty? Is it to win a particular Grand Slam? Where's your head at when you're going through your season, when you're practicing?
So when you're young, you used to think, okay, I'm going to be world number one, I'm going to be Grand Slams. But you've got to have realistic goals in place to achieve your big goal. So right now, my goal for the end of the year is to be 250 in the world.
Mm,
That means I'll be qualifying for the Grand
mm,
Slams. And right now I'm around 400, so I need to drop 150 spots. Um, so, those are my goals, but I've never understood why, if someone does something, why they would do it not to be the best of the
mm,
best. I just don't. That's the way my mum's raised us. She's very academic, she's a doctor, so she's very, very smart and a high achiever. And my brother, sister, whatever we did, whether it was my sister in academics, my brother in sports, or like if we came second or third, it wasn't good enough. Not as in she was disappointed, but it's just you're either first or, in my eyes, you're first or you're last. That's just the brutal truth. I want to
mm.
be the best of the best. I want to be winning Grand Slams. I want to be number one in the world. But you've got to have realistic goals in place. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure all the time.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of sports that I guess aren't rugby in our country, people put it down to like, oh, well, you're never going to be world number one, or you're never going to win a Grand Slam. But the thing is if you don't believe, like, if you don't think you can do it, you're definitely not. And I think you've
Yeah,
obviously dedicated your life to it. So, like, you might as well aim as high as you can, sort of thing.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, can you give me a little bit of insight into what your strength and conditioning training looks like alongside your tennis? And do you have someone you consistently work with, or?
Yep. So I work with the Tennis New Zealand strength and conditioning trainers. Her name's Emily Fanning, and she has a very specific program for me. So at the moment, I'm working on a lot of cardio and endurance. So like 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off type of stuff. So you're like playing a point
Mm,
basically. And then we're strengthening my glutes and adductors and core a lot because those are the main muscles you do. I've started lifting a little
mm,
bit to strengthen up the legs, like a lot of jumps and stuff. But yesterday I did my first kind of high intensity workout, different one, and I can't even walk this
yeah.
morning. So I got to try. That's why I'm actually heading to the courts earlier to try and manage that so I can actually run on the court today.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, no, it's very specific, and I started working with Emily around August last year, and my results have gone up and up, and I feel 10 times stronger on the court. And just, I use this app called XPS, and that app is basically I just click on, and it's got my whole schedule for the week, and I just click onto the app. Now I click on, it might say cardio today, and it gives me the cardio session. It might say strength. It gives you all the exercises and gives you demos. It's perfect,
mm,
especially for when you're traveling all the time. It's harder to, hey, what am I doing today? Hey, what am I doing today? Like I've got my layout for the week and I just get it done.
mm. Do you enjoy the strength and conditioning side of tennis, or would you rather just play more tennis?
Uh, I never used to, but I enjoy winning. And I've lost too many matches due to cramping at the last minute or struggling with fitness. So now I'm at a point where I'm extremely fit and I've learned to love it because the pain you go through is literally it pays off so much on the court.
Mm. Is that something like, because tennis is obviously a little bit more, I guess, ahead of other sports? Is the strength and conditioning side of it something you see a lot of the pros being super dedicated to?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the pros are doing 3.5 hours on their body with physio, mobility, and strength and conditioning, an hour on the tennis court
Mm,
because everyone can hit a ball, but if you can't get there and can't get down and execute shots, or you can't last a match, then there's no point practicing tennis
mm,
because that's kind of the cherry. Of course, you got to be able to hit a tennis ball, but you got to be able to get to the tennis ball. So, and the balls are, the tennis balls are coming at, guys are serving at 215 on average kilometers per hour now. And then forehands and backhands are coming, 100, up from 100 kilometers. So it's like, you've got to be fit enough to get around.
mm. And can you touch on a little bit how, because I think a lot of people who haven't really watched a lot of tennis or even played tennis don't understand how physically grueling it is. Can you touch on what it feels like to be deep in like the third set of a match, playing someone who's like
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more physically, I guess, capable than you, serving massive,
Yeah.
that sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, so I actually had that exact scenario at the ASB Classic second round. I was playing against a guy, Tiago Monteiro. He's ranked maybe 50 in the world, 40 in the world. Brazilian lefty, from the absolute trenches. Like his story is he's from the trenches. And first set I win 7-6, second set I lose 6-4, third set it's 2-all, and I'm starting to cramp like significantly all through my legs. Like I can't move. I'm having to change my serving position because I'm cramping when I get into certain actions. And I look down the other end, and this guy's just pumped up. Like he's jumping around, he's pumped up, he's ready to go. And you just look and you're just like, what the fuck? Like you just sit down one end and you're just like, how do you even, it's like climbing Mount Everest. That's what it feels like. So, and the other side of it is I was playing at Davis Cup this year when I got fitter, and it's 4-all in the third set, deciding match for New Zealand versus Bulgaria, packed out crowd. And it's the first time I've stood there and just started smiling because it's like, this is so satisfying. Being like 3 hours in, you're leaving everything out there. You're battling for your country against another country. And you guys are head to like, you know, toe to toe, just going at it. It's the coolest feeling ever. And it's so satisfying. And that's when you know, like when you're fit and when you've put in the work, it's just such a good feeling.
And that kind of segues into my next question. And that is, so nutrition is an aspect that in most sports I think is still underrated and heavily overlooked. How detailed or on the ball are you with your eating? And is it hard to, kind of like we're talking about, cater to the demands of the rigorous training and the matches?
I mean, personally, I'm a really bad eater. Like I can barely stomach food. But I try to eat as clean as I can. I just try to eat very, very clean. I'm more better with, like I'm a better drinker, not like getting on the piss. I mean, like electrolytes and stuff like that. Because that was a big one for my cramping that I was suffering from for a long time. So I mean, it's so important. Look at Djokovic. He's kind of nailed it to a T, and you have no idea what's in that guy's bottles. But, yeah, I think it's a huge part. I mean, it's the perfect analogy is, you know, if you put good fuel in a car, it's going to go quicker than some bad fuel in a car, right? So I think that's the best analogy because it's very true. So I just try to eat very clean and try to stay away from sugars, but then I get to the supermarket and go down the confectionery aisle and it all goes to shit.
Do you struggle? I was going to say, do you struggle because like I deal with a lot of combat athletes. I do a lot of nutrition programming and weight cutting for combat athletes. And the biggest problem people like in that sector have to solve is their output is so high from the training, like your energy output's so high. Do you struggle to keep your weight up, or do you struggle with appetite, or even like you were saying before with cramping? Do you have ways to problem solve those things, or they are sort of ongoing issues for you?
No, definitely ways to, like, of course, like my salt intake and all stuff like that, and weighing yourself before you go on the court, after you're on the court, so you know the volume of drinks you need to take for the rest of the day. My weight, my lightest I would ever be after a match would be around 77, and I start the match around 79, 79 to 80, and that's quite a lot. I mean, losing 2 kegs of sweat is a lot. So I personally want to be at 82. That's where I want to be. And yeah, I take like new Zest products. And yeah, just trying to add weight and stuff. I've never been a fan of like, you know, like muscle gainers and stuff. I think just eating clean meat is a really good way to go. But yeah, that's me personally. I'm not as savvy as a lot of other athletes, which I definitely should be. So that's, you know, I got to hold myself accountable for that. But it's very interesting. And yeah, I think eating does make a huge difference on how you feel.
Because you obviously play in like super hot climates. Like what sort of temperatures does it get up to in matches you've played?
And in Asia, it got up to 42 degrees. So you're literally just surviving out there. Like you're taking drink bottles to the back of the court, ice bags, and you're just surviving. So anyone who laughs at the fact I wear tank tops when I play, that's the reason. Because I sweat so much and shit stick to me, and you play in the hottest climates. So you just got to have like management plans. But my physios and trainer are pretty good at managing those type of things. I've just started with a company called Manuka Performance, and it's really good for like energy gels and that type of stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of onto it, but getting better.
Cool. And then the last thing I kind of just wanted to ask you was, obviously tennis is a sport that for the better part of the last 2 decades has been dominated by 3 players, Djokovic, Federer and Nadal. And Federer's obviously retired. Djokovic obviously just had a win at the Aussie Open. But it seems like that older guard is starting to phase out. How do you see the sport going in the next decade? Is it exciting for you as a younger guy coming through? And just as a fan of the sport, how do you feel about the changing of the guard, I guess?
Well, I mean, yeah, as soon as I've picked up a racket, those were the 3 guys that dominated the sport. So, going into a Grand Slam, you ask people who's going to win it, and soon it's not going to be, oh, Nadal's winning, Djokovic is winning. They're stopping. So I think it's a really exciting time for different players to win, and I honestly think a lot of guys just didn't believe they could win, at the time because of those 3. So yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm ready to go. Excited. It's exciting, taking Taranaki on the world stage with me and trying to put it on the world stage and hopefully build some awareness. And one day we get an indoor center and Taranaki, get some hard courts. So yeah, I have big plans for Taranaki. So I'm hoping I can deliver on them.
Is there one Grand Slam in particular you'd like to have a real good showing at?
I mean, personally, I love grass. I think that suits my game quite well. I mean, you grow up playing that Harwood tournament every single year since you're a young kid. But of course, Aussie Open, I think, would be the one to win because, I just want to see a whole plane of Kiwis turning up, when I start playing main draw matches there.
Awesome. So I've just got some quick fire questions we're going to roll through. If you were on death row, what would your last meal be? And it's a main and a dessert.
Main and dessert, death row. It would be burger fuel, barbecue bacon roadster, because I eat those all the time. And dessert would be almond magnum.
Nice. One song to train to, or I guess practice to, for the rest of your life.
One song to... Talk is cheap, Chet Faker.
Nice. In your opinion, the greatest athlete of all time?
Tiger Woods.
That's so interesting you pick someone like in golf, but if you had to pick who's the GOAT in tennis?
GOAT in tennis this is such a hard one because statistically it's Djokovic. I mean, statistically it is Djokovic. But see, is the GOAT debate a GOAT, like the greatest of all time? Does the greatest cover just that sport, or does it cover who promoted the sport, who brought people to the sport, who was the greatest, the greatest athlete? Does being an athlete just cover the statistics of the sport and performance based? Or is it about likability? Does all that combine into one?
I think the reason why this question always comes up, especially in tennis, is because people interpret it differently. But if I was going to ask you to determine that, if everyone was at their peak, their absolute best, who would win?
Djokovic. Right. The guy's not human, man. He's literally not human. Like he wins Aussie Open, drops one set with a 3 centimeter tear. I mean, I'm no sports doctor, but tell me how that works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy. But then you look at Nadal, and Nadal's done unreal on clay. But you look at Djokovic, like the spread of tournaments he's won on all surfaces. As much as I'm honestly a Fed fan. So
yeah, me too.
I'm a Federer fan. I mean, the guy literally is absolute gentleman. But the greatest of all time, and I always say it is Tiger Woods, so I don't have to get into this conversation.
Nice.
But Tiger Woods' win percentage is 22%. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
22%. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but 22% of tournaments, if you win that, you are good.
Yeah, that's a lot of money too in golf.
Yeah, that is a lot of money.
Your favorite movie of all time?
Has to be Grown Ups.
Nice. Your biggest inspiration?
My dad.
Nice. And one piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self?
I don't know like the quote or anything, but I would tell my 10-year-old self that every downfall you have in life is a massive opportunity for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like every time there's a negative situation, there is a chance for you to grow, and everything happens for a reason.
Conor McGregor's coach, John Kavanagh, has a book called Win or Learn, and I think that's a good way to look at it. Like you said right at the start, you were like, one of the biggest things I've learned is that when you lose matches, you recognise it's an opportunity to learn from them, not to just pack a sulk and take an ego hit. So that's cool. So before I wrap up, is there anyone or anything you would like to plug or thank or give a shout out to?
No, just New Plymouth Boys High School. I think. I mean, you've grown up there as well, and I think they raise some good men over there, and they raise some unbelievable athletes. And I think we just got to keep. I think no matter where you go or how far you go in your sport, you got to keep thanking the people who have, helped develop you. And in this kind of, with New Plymouth Boys High being mutual with us, I think you got to thank them because they've raised some pretty incredible athletes then, and some pretty amazing just men who have come from that school. And the way they treated me, my attendance was like 3%. So they were unreal. So I just want to give a massive thanks to them.
Yeah, awesome. So for anyone listening, I will link Ajeet's Instagram in the description for you to follow along with what he's doing. But bro, thank you so much for jumping on today. I know you're a busy man.
Thanks, man.
But I honestly wish
Appreciate
you all the best, and just go hard for the 2023 season.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. See you later.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Thanks for watching. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And for all things Unbroken Performance and myself, hit the links in the description below.